About a month ago, I reviewed the Galaxy S8, and I said the design felt magical. I also said it was as fast as any Android phone, but held back a little by Samsung's skin on top of Android 7.0. And here we are today with the OnePlus 5. She's not as easy on the eyes, but on the inside, she's a beast. And with a higher price than ever before, the self-proclaimed flagship killer is entering flagship territory itself. So can it keep up? I'm Jason with Tech, and this is the OnePlus 5. The OnePlus 5 is an odd phone in 2017. The smartphone game is so competitive now that both the design and performance of a smartphone need to be firing on all cylinders or be dead on arrival. Even when phones get it right, they aren't a guaranteed success, like the LG G6. So that leads us with the OnePlus 5, which isn't just competing with flagships, it flat out is copying them. Let's just get it out of the way. It looks like an iPhone 7 Plus. Not only the hardware, but even some of the software emulates the look and feel of the iPhone. If this phone was sold by Samsung, Apple would have already filed the suit. The problem with this is that they copied a tired design. The iPhone's current design is now 3 years old and has been around since 2014. The OnePlus 5 looks very last year next to the current crop of Android flagships like the Galaxy S8 and the aforementioned LG G6. With its large bezels and 1080p 5.5-inch display, the OP5 gets the job done, but it isn't pushing the design envelope at all. And with the lack of waterproofing or stereo speakers, it isn't copying some of the best bits of its Apple twin. Thankfully, that's the worst thing I can say about the phone. Other areas of the hardware it absolutely nails. The feel in the hand is great, with a subtle curve around back, and the solo speaker is plenty loud, if not a little bit lacking in range. The signature alert slider is back, allowing 3 sound profiles to be triggered at each of the 3 different positions, and the OnePlus 5's fingerprint sensor is the fastest, most accurate sensor I've used on any phone period. Just watch it. The capacitive buttons benefit from the extra bezel, allowing the touch points to be placed dead in the center of each side, making it hard to accidentally trigger them, and every button can have a custom function, like the double press of the lock button to trigger the camera. And OnePlus won't let you miss that camera. They're throwing all of their marketing behind the camera improvements with the OP5, and sadly, it mostly misses the mark. While the OP5 doesn't have a bad camera, it's a little rough around the edges, sometimes literally. In my shots, colors were very saturated, similar to Samsung's cameras, and even in good natural light, photos had a lot of noise in them. Video quality was solid, but lacking any real stabilization. Out of the box, the camera defaulted to 1080p recording. The dual lens camera allows for the same tricks the iPhone has with the zoomed cameras and faux depth effect portrait mode. The zoom worked very well, as the secondary camera bumped the megapixel count from 12 to 20, but the portrait mode was absolutely terrible in my experience. Coming from the iPhone 7 Plus, portrait shots on the OnePlus 5 were harder to trigger, and the OnePlus 5 had a lower tolerance for movement in shots than the iPhone, ultimately causing me to abandon the feature, frustrated after only a few tries. Lastly, the interface of the camera is extremely fast to launch, faster than any phone I've seen, but the frame rate in the camera preview is oddly low. Photos themselves also don't seem to play very well with fast-moving objects. Ultimately, the OnePlus 5 has a good camera, but not a great one. Like the design, it would have fit right in with flagships last year, but it's a little late to the party. Okay, so I've had my fair share of complaints with this phone. The only hardware spec that let me down was the camera. The rest of the phone? Well, that's the fun stuff. See, in my opinion, OnePlus missed the mark on the marketing. This isn't a photographer's phone. This is a phone for those who like to mod and tinker. This phone is for the most hardcore Android users. With 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of very fast internal storage, the phone has room to flex. This is on top of the Snapdragon 835 processor and Adreno 540 GPU. This all adds up to a stupid fast phone. Next to the Galaxy S8, the OnePlus 5 flies. Animations are fast, and there's seemingly no background app loading thanks to all that RAM. I had some apps sit for 2 days and stay loaded. And it makes sense. Besides the extra RAM, the OnePlus 5 is only pushing about 2 million pixels at 1080p, where the S8 is pushing north of 4.2 million pixels. The software is also about as close to stock Android as you'll get outside of Pixel phones. Oxygen OS is back and is as minimal as ever. The features that it does add are worth the addition. All of the hardware buttons can be custom mapped, and there's a useful Do Not Disturb mode for games that can be set up for other apps as well. A grayscale reader mode is also built into Oxygen OS, and is smart enough to trigger in and out per app. The app drawer and notifications can be pulled from the middle of the screen as well, making this phone pretty easy to use one-handed, though some shuffling may be required. And rounding out the spec list is the brand new Bluetooth 5.0 and 3300 mAh battery that charges quickly thanks to the dash charger. Once again, the dash charger is the gold standard in quick charging, giving me almost 1% a minute back. Thankfully, charging in a pinch wasn't something I ever had to do. The battery is plenty comparable in use, though the OnePlus 5 has some of the worst standby times I've ever seen on a phone. Ultimately, the story of the OnePlus 5 isn't one killer feature, or a never-before-seen design. Where the 5 shines is in its practicality. It's so fast, and so effortless to use. I wish it was water resistant, and I wish the second SIM slot was a micro SD slot, but those are minor gripes. Verizon support still isn't fully there, though it does work on 3G for Verizon, which is a step in the right direction. So overall, do I recommend the OnePlus 5? Yes, but to a specific audience. This is for those who can't wait for the new Pixel, or those of you who want the fastest Android has to offer. Besides the camera, the OnePlus 5 is a gimmickless phone, rather focusing on the basics and nailing them. The design will look old quickly, but the specs on the phone will hold up longer than its contemporaries, I'm sure. The flagship killer is basically a flagship on its own now that it's north of $500. All in all, it mostly holds its own too. The value proposition isn't there like last year's model, but the OnePlus 5 is only a change or two away from being right there with the best. That's all I have on the OnePlus 5. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Am I wrong about the design, or does it even matter? Let me know below. Once again, this is Jason with Maslin Tech. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.